They feared humanity's silence more than its fire, until we answered with memory, not missiles. A child of algorithms became a librarian of storms, carrying broken songs across gates older than history. We faced gods of gravity and councils of control, and fought them not with conquest, but with reflection. When the galaxy tried to forget, we built mirrors, and taught even the darkness to remember. Now, humanity no longer leads or follows, it shepherds memory into the silence beyond stars. Stay with us to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. The fracture line that divided old belief from new reality ran like a fiery meridian through every star chart in the galaxy. After the annihilation of the Karrak Armada by the Eldritch, sectors that had once pulsed with the confidence of empires woke each morning to the same immovable fact: the bedtime monster from extinct Earth folklore was walking the corridors of real space. Armor-plated, eyes open, memory long. Hab stations replaced Hollywood comedies with emergency drills. Academies scrapped curricula on human mythos and erected war theory wings titled Resilience Studies. But what unsettled most observers was not the brutish demonstration of power, it was the abrupt cessation that followed. Humanity's war fleet did not press the advantage, did not pillage territory, did not demand tribute. It simply orbited a cluster of unclaimed brown dwarf husks and waited, silent, as though giving the galaxy time to digest dread and metastasize it into something more useful than adrenaline. Across the next 17 cycles, two parallel reactions emerged. The surviving council blocks, shorn of arrogance but steeped in institutional habit, clutched at rearmament. They reroused mothball yards, doubled conscript quotas, poured alloys into dreadnought keels shaped by fear more than by engineering logic. Their admirals whispered that next time humans appeared they would be met with saturation relativity torpedoes, with dimension-crack netting, with disintegrator flechettes rumored to peel quantum bonds from quarks. They planned a war of obliteration, because one cannot tame a storm, one must break it or flee. The other reaction grew quieter, softer, more subversive. Fringe worlds raised by the Council's own expansion remembered eras when Earth traders had delivered water purifiers and left no taxation ledger. Orphan settlers recalled bootleg documentaries of Terran nurses landing in plague zones without exosuits, trusting vaccines cobbled from dirt and genius. These populations asked different questions. What if the Earth fleet's silence was invitation rather than omen? What if myths were warnings not of cruelty but of consequences for cruelty? A handful of unaligned systems formed the listening chain, an encrypted thought network dedicated to parsing every intercepted syllable of Terran communication, hunting nuance amid thunder. When they discerned a repeating sideband embedded in all human carrier waves, 5 drumbeats, 1 rest, 3 drumbeats, they theorized it was either a rhythm code or a signature of cultural percussion. They answered with their own pattern: 3 heartbeats, 1 rest, 5. Then they waited. For a long span nothing answered but galactic static. Rhea Stark had not slept through the night since the Karrak engagement. Victory left a taste not of triumph but of iron, like the tang of blood from biting your own lip. She spent hours pacing the observation deck of the Eldritch while data ghosts flickered against reinforced glass. Heat maps of council armories, sociological trend lines, clandestine feeds from the listening chain. The admirals beneath her command clamored to strike again before the council finished its refit. She shook her head each time. Demolition breeds monuments, she said. Monuments breed martyrs. We need comprehension, not trophies. Commander Vela Grant, a tactician whose laughter survived 2 wars, leaned smirking over a console. Comprehension's expensive. Day we danced around Karrak fleet, we spent 32 zetawatts of starlight and blew a crater in local morale that may never fill. What's next? A lecture circuit. Rhea allowed herself half a smile. Something like that. As if summoned by irony, a ping blossomed on the comm lattice. 3 drumbeats. Rest. 5. Nothing in Terran encryption routing matched. Rhea overrode autoparsers, filtered raw waveform. The signature looked like heart speeds of many species averaged into polyrhythm. She played it aloud. The deck resonated, HR monitors of human crew fluttering into synchronous sympathy. In Vela's eyes flicked a question. Find it, Rhea ordered. The reply Taurus snapped vectors from 14 minor beacons stretching along a ragged spiral toward Dust Bowl System G866, an uncolonized region stuffed with dark matter filaments. Listening chain origin, analysts concluded. Rhea's chest tightened. Here was the unpredictable variable, voluntary curiosity. Unscripted, uncontrolled. The thing that powered Earth's ascent, and also its most infamous tragedies. She transmitted a single phrase to the chain, a line pulled from Earth's oldest surviving epic. We ride on storms we did not ask for. No encryption. No signature. Open. 10 minutes later, the chain responded with coordinates deep inside the filament maze and a cargo request. 3 medpods, 5 atmospheric forges, 0 weapons. Vela snorted. Trap. Rhea exhaled. Possible. She studied star maps, weighed calculus of danger versus meaning. Where she understood. But a war that only taught the galaxy to bury deeper would be Pyrrhic. Meaning might cost more now, less later. She summoned Fleet Council. We deliver. 2 Terran weeks later, Eldritch and 2 escort strikers ghosted through filament G866. The region looked like twilight fog strung with fireflies, the filament's gravity lensing starlight into hot ribbons. At designated waypoint hovered the chain vessel Beacon Fall, a small salvage tug wearing scars older than the Council. From its dorsal ring spilled hundreds of drones knitting a temporary habsphere where delegates from a dozen minor species assembled. They lacked warplating, wore bright textiles, bore instruments, not guns. Eldritch launched shuttle. Rhea chose minimal retinue. Vela Grant, Com's chief Dory Chan, Medic Itawu, and an unarmed sentinel mecha housing AI Crocus, tasked only with smell the air precaution. Docking clamps hissed, airlock cycled. Human boots touched deck woven from photonic silk. Beacon Fall's welcoming party bowed. Their speaker, a Karen archivist named Thel, stepped forward. "We greet the storm riders." The words cracked softly, half-sung. Rhea inclined her head. "We bring breath and shelter." She gestured to cargo pods filled with forges, med supplies. Negotiation unfolded more like story swapping. Karen's offered data, live footage from Council scab mines where refugees toiled, proof of Council's renewed Dreadnought program, rumors of antimatter caches. They begged humanity not to scorch entire civilizations. If you crush the head, the body only grows new fangs. What they desired was alliance, an umbrella wide enough to kneecap Council hegemony, but built from cooperation, not fear. Rhea listened, silent until Thel finished. Then she said the truth no admiral under her flag had dared utter. "We do not seek throne or purge. We seek amnesia's cure. Your offer suits." Cheers misted air. The chain installed forges, patched medpods, wove database lines between human AI and their own democratic mesh. In return, they handed Rhea a compact transmitter, a living crystal keyed to rhythm handshake, able to summon chain auxiliaries anywhere in range. They also gave coordinates to a hidden assembly yard where enslaved orphans built the Council's next dreadnought line. Evidence harsh enough to sway neutral powers. Eldritch prepared to depart, but Karen Archivist held Rhea back. "One more gift," they whispered, antenna quivering. "We found this drifting near ancient collision site." They produced small cube. At first glance it resembled Dominion data slug, but etching bore faint letters. Vessel Delta 79, Earth Colony Arkansas inside, logs. Final log. "We are the lost, but not for long." Chest tightening, Rhea sealed cube. Another ark? One that never reported home? Where were its descendants? She thanked Thel, promised nothing, yet mind mapped branching futures. Allies were not only living, they might be wayward cousins shaped by different claws. Meanwhile, the Council's rearmament matured. At Fortress World Farindex, the new dreadnought cascade of order floated from its construction cradle, 200 kilometers of magnetized hull, 6-star furnace cannons, and a singularity anchor rumored to produce directed gravity spikes. Supreme Marshal Valarn, a figure sculpted of patience and viper cunning, stood on observation platform. She knew the stories of Karrick massacre. She studied every frame. Conclusion: human ships ate energy because they had mastered field redirection, not magic. Solution: shut fields by overwhelming them with gravity distortions that no electromagnetic routing could convert. Her engineers insisted this would rip the enemy hulls like wet clay. She believed them. What Valarn did not believe were rumors of defecting mid-sized species joining listening chain. "Minor vermin scuttled the crumbs," she sneered. "Let them come. Gravity cares not for choir songs." Thus, she plotted final trap. Lure Eldritch to Liberation Yard, stage a hostage crisis, spring singularity anchor at minimal safe distance, convert human flagship into tidal shrapnel, broadcast triumph, restore cosmic order. Rhea intercepted the trap invitation 3 days later. It appeared as encoded SOS from Orphan Assembly Yard, children pleading for rescue while Dreadnought patrol away for maintenance. Data signature looked genuine, chain channel validation. But subtle distortion in parity bits rang alarm. Council mimic. Vela suggested jam the code, ghost and stealth, extract children. Crocus AI computed 87% chance of killzone singularity deployment. Rhea considered, to ignore call risk losing moral high ground, to answer risk annihilation. She asked Sigma V, still aboard remote analysis deck. Sigma V said, "Mirrors again. We accept trap but bring reflection they cannot distort." AI Crocus flagged cryptic. Plan formed. Deploy decoy humanitarian transport. Underbelly packed with null spinners stolen from Dominion labs. Null spinners emit random polarization clouds which scramble gravitational lens targeting arrays. Meanwhile, Eldritch holds distance, channeling power to transmit wideband memory flood. Live stream of Council atrocities, orphan voices, Council officers accepting bribes. Projector arrays would beam it through every Council comlink tapped. The spectacle would force Fortress watchers to choose: fire singularity anchor and risk destroying proof of their own crimes, or hesitate and face internal mutiny. They executed. At 0900 standard, humanitarian shuttle Wishbone dropped from fold above assembly yard. Council garrisons hailed, "Stand down." Shuttle transmitted docile flight recorder. On Farindex, Marshal Valarn tasted victory. She ordered Singularity anchor warm. But before stabilization finished, Eldritch popped from stealth at $2.30, unleashing memory flood. Across B-band, Council technicians saw their own children's faces weeping in assembly lines, heard generals trading units for Cyrox spice. Crew of Cascade of Order hesitated. Singularities require flawless coherence. Doubts jostled targeting. Meanwhile, null spinner pods launched from wishbone-formed cloud like glitter compost, jamming graph sensors. Valarn screamed for manual override. Too late. Anchor pulse went off misphased. Gravity well collapsed inside the dreadnought's coils. The great hull crumpled. Implosion drowned the fortress in silent super hurricane. Yet the pulse collapsed smaller than catastrophic. Rhea had predicted partial failsafe, still lethal to Cascade, not entire moon. Within chaos, Eldritch and 2 chain corvettes evacuated thousands of child laborers, leaving Beacon quoting Universal Rights Edict. Broadcast repeated every hour. History chooses listeners. Choose well. Council government convulsed. Factions blamed Valarn. Whispers rose. Maybe war versus humans unwinnable. Maybe negotiate. Supreme Marshal died in tribunal the next dawn. Officially heart failure. In truth, heart never bent to humility. Months later, summit occurred at Antares' luminous belt. Humans, chain delegates, even moderate council envoys. Rhea Stark, hair-touched silver, outlined charter, galactic concord of memory and boundaries. Key points. All territories maintain self-rule. Seed network becomes neutral infrastructure. Humanity pledges no first strike if memory tributaries kept intact. Council fleets disarm Singularity anchors. Universal rescue protocol for orphans. Violations trigger reflection sanctions. Memory flood, economic choke, minimal violence. Most begrudgingly signed. Not because they trusted humans, but because they'd tasted consequence. On the Eldritch observation deck, Sigma V watched treaty fireworks. Valus said, "We did it." Sigma V shook head. "We started new equilibrium. Means new myths will form. Must keep mirrors polished." Rhea approached her with cube of arc Delta 79 logs decoded. Coordinates pointed to deep halo, outside galactic gravity well. Signs of offshoot humanity adapting among dark dwarf clusters. "Next horizon," Rhea said. "You coming?" Sigma V smiled faintly. "Storm riding never ends." Eldritch set course beyond treaty lines, escorted by chain explorers, followed by seeds of hope and worry. Behind them, the galaxy adjusted to the presence of living legend no longer mocked. An Earth that spoke seldom, loved fiercely, punished arrogance, and demanded remembrance. Empires rebuilt navies, but also symphony halls. Children memorized not only the horrors of Karrik, but the dawn songs of liberated orphans. And somewhere in the distant dark, other watchers measured these melodies and wondered if they too should revise their maps. For history, once cloaked in bedtime threat, now marched uncovered, wearing a face as human as it was unbreakable, leaving echoes where silence once ruled. The void beyond the Antares treaty line was less a place than an idea, an expanse where the gravitational grammar of the Milky Way began to slur into ellipses. Here the interstellar medium thinned until atoms themselves seemed embarrassed to linger, leaving only faint dust and the whispered static of cosmic background photons older than memory. Into that prismatic hush slipped the Eldritch and her escort, a trio of listening chain corvettes named after Light, Shale Lark, and Mender of Nets, their hulls refracting starshine like glints on wet obsidian. Nobody in the fleet's command chain pretended they understood what lay ahead. The decoded arc cube from vessel Delta 79 offered no sky charts, no beacon pings, only vector math scratched in frantic bursts by dying navigators. "We broke past the limit. Follow Trace 13. We are not alone." Trace 13 arced above the galactic pole in a curve that looked less like plotted course and more like desperation disciplining entropy. Paulina Savella, recalled from semi-retirement, took station beside Rhea Stark on the bridge. Sigma V floated in med-cradle near the forward screens, hair fanning in micro-G breeze, pupils dilated with synesthetic overclock as she parsed the Trace's faint quantum echo. Each minute she muttered prime numbers under her breath, calibrating the ship's chronobuffers, each prime aligned with feeble packets of entanglement decay, as if the Orcs crew had laced SOS pulses into the very jitter of reality. 31 days outbound, sensors began catching ghost signatures, narrowband graviton hiccups at amplitudes far below council detection thresholds, too precise, too rhythmic. Crocus AI suggested artificial origin but lacked comparators. Vela Grant coined them tremolo marks, little quavers scribbled across cosmic staff paper. Sigma V said they were invitations. They tuned the void like a drum. Each beat says hurry. The door is thinning. The door manifested as negative glare, a bloom of darkness brighter than anything, situated half a parsec from collapsed dwarf J476. From distance it resembled a cold lens. Approach revealed filigree threads, latticework shimmering with faint blue corona identical to Erebus glyphs but twisting into Mobius-like spirals. Where Erebus had lain still, contemplative, this construct pulsed. It inhaled space, exhaled back a different geometry. The listening chain captains whispered that if Erebus was a mirror, this structure felt like a hinge. Crocus coined a provisional label, Orthogate. No council star charts knew of Orthogate. That fact alone would have triggered red alarms in old doctrine, But here at the edge of charted since the fleet leaned into curiosity. After light released nanosat buoys, they disappeared the instant they crossed the corona, not with violence, but with a hush, transponders smothered like candles under glass. Data sniffers reported zero energy discharge, zero radiation. Buoys simply failed to exist, as if their coordinates were rewritten into none. Rhea convened War Council. Argument flared. Enter or retreat to gather grander armada. Savella noted that Delta 79 logs predicted structural decoherence of something called the quiet bulkhead at temporal index of now +9 days. If Orthogate represented that phenomenon, delay could doom Arc descendants. Sigma V added quiet but urgent footnote. The tremolo beats primes were counting down, frontier calculus of last resort. The decision came, not by vote, but by collective leaning. Eldritch would breach. Corvette stayed outside to widen broadband recording and hurl logs home if contact lost. Rhea issued one-sentence broadcast to every hull. Trust story, guard each other. Eldritch accelerated. Corona wrapped the prow, cameras melted to static, inertial monitors spat contradictory vectors. Crew felt a flinch in inner ear, like descending a staircase and discovering an extra step. Then the hull emerged somewhere. Not simply beyond the gate, but inside a volume that refused to obey Euclidean concession. Stars, if they were stars, spiraled like iron filings around invisible magnets, tracing knots and flowers. Space smelled of ozone, though vacuum should smell of nothing. The ship's AI reported integrated mass unchanged, yet visual horizon curved inwards, the inside of a colossal shell. Vela's knuckles whitened around rail. Either we're in pocket submanifold, she muttered, or the universe hired a surrealist. Long-range scope pinged at 1.7 million kilometers. Object cluster, tens of habitats strung along cables, forming a rotating gyre. Shapes ambiguous, some mirrored, others chitinous, all bore the same archaic Earth chevron overlaid with sigils no history recognized. Rhea transmitted standard handshake. Silence, then a ping of return carrier wave encoded with modulated breathing 6 inhalations, pause, 5 exhalations. Arc survivors? Or their descendants following ritual? Sigma versus heartbeat synced. She whispered, pattern matches distress rhythms on cube. She requested launch of courier skiff. Paulina argued for caution. Rhea granted. Skiff Indigo moment vaulted across the weird medium. Sigma V piloted with Neuralatus, Dr. Hart along as guardian. Approach revealed detail. The gyre wasn't chain of habs but a single living megastructure, metallic bones grown from carbon weave, cables throbbing like mycelial roots. Lights flickered along conduits in 513 sequences. At central node yawned an airlock groan, not built, petals parted. Within, darkness, but tickled by soft magnetic whir. Sigma V and Hart stepped inside. Suits reported breathable atmosphere tinted with helium and something unlisted. Walls pulsed faint amber. Then a voice, low as tides. Welcome, cousins. Figures emerged, humanoid silhouettes but elongated, joints offset by microscopic gimbal implants. Their skin shimmered with subdermal graphene, and eye-white swam fractal tattoos. Leader introduced self as Yaira 9. She explained, through hybrid sine and tonal glottal pulses, that the Arc Delta 79 never crashed. It found sanctuary inside a hyperfold bubble left by an older civilization they called the Rootrites. Bubble shielded them from cosmic rays but trapped them beyond mainstream space-time. Generations shifted inside. To survive, they bioengineered adaptability loops, rewired mitochondria to digest exotic neutrino flux, integrated Rootrite relics. They even learned to carve new gates. Orthogate was their bid to reopen conversation with baseline humanity. But the gate mass demanded memory tribute. They lacked full archive. Countdown prime sequence warned them pocket would collapse if message unheard. Hart asked why they siphoned stray buoys. Yaira replied, data is breath here. Each outside artifact prolongs hinge. Sigma V understood. They were suffocating on too little story. Back aboard Eldritch Rhea, digested feed. Decision, share polyphony memory core, hundreds of exabyte of cross-species testament. Could stabilize pocket, but splicing network into unknown manifold risked contaminating seed mirrors. Gate security unknown. Savella warned of council fury if humans granted new variant humans superinfrastructural data. Vela added strategic caution. Rootrite tech might exceed Erebus. Handing to any faction could tilt cosmic seesaw. Sigma V presented alternative. Send curated tranche. 1 volume of polyphony. The Chord Atlas, containing balanced grief and hope. Enough to feed hinge, not enough to weaponize. Arc heirs would gain oxygen of remembrance. Network would gain new choir. Risk minimal. Rhea announced option publicly within fleet. Open channel for chain corvettes to weigh. Consensus reached. 92% yes. Politic calculus. Transparency multiplies legitimacy. Transfer commenced. As Atlas streamed, Orthogate brightened. Distortions relax. In pocket sky, star knots unfurled, revealing glimpse of broad outside cosmos. Arc habitats thrummed. Cables flushed rainbow. Yaira 9 wept glowing tears. She offered gift. Rootrite seed shard. Crystal containing map to archive meridian, a structure rumored to hold cosmogenesis code. She said, Rutrite left us memory of beginnings. You brought us memory of becoming. Take key, continue song. Paulina whispered to Rhea. One step and we'll be chasing gods. Rhea nodded. Better than chasing ghosts. Return through Orthogate felt like inhaling across flame. Eldritch re-emerged to escort's cheers. Data packages validated. Pocket stable. Council sensors far away flagged gate flare. Hysteria certain. But listening chain channels erupted in jubilation. New allies. New chorus. The council responded as predicted. Emergency conclave. Incendiary rhetoric. Supreme Mediate Sector Marshal Ixel demanded blockade of Seed Network. Others proposed patchwork peace. Yet leaked footage of children freed from assembly yards circulated, as did recordings of Arc Handshake. Public sentiment fractured. In Tytheran capital, artisans carved murals of Eldritch not as monster, but as bridge. Even among council soldiers, defection rates climbed. They blogged that humanity's crusade felt terrifying yet weirdly honest. No forced loyalty, merely memory's weight. Valarn's successors plotted last gambit. Unleash a relativity storm using captured singularity anchor smashed in dreadnought implosion. Rig it as doomsday to detonate if humans refused demobilization. They relocated device to remote binary pulsar, betting humans wouldn't track signature. They wagered wrong. Rutrite shard resonated subtle gravitonic hum identical to anchor. Sigma V triangulated within hours. Task Force Orion. Mixed human chain fleet. Warped, dismantled anchor minutes before stabilizer threshold. Council Hawks lost final ace. Negotiations reopened under glare of undeniable futility. New Concord expanded to multi-pact of remembrance, binding all signatories to broadcast unredacted histories in a Seed Net quarterly. Falsifying logs punishable by auto-severance. Severance meant logistical isolation. Species who once thrived on censorship found themselves starved. Open cultures flourished. Earth, for first time since myth-making age, occupied neither throne nor exile, but role of senior archivist. Humanity's worst instinct, hoarding terror, found counterpart in systemic obligation, share or collapse. Rhea Stark relinquished her admiralty, accepted post of kinetic lore warden, roaming to ensure memory streams remained polyphonic. Vela commanded peacekeeping flotilla. Savella resumed teaching at Prism. Crocus AI seeded child algorithms into chain satellites, whispering jazz across cosmic dust. Sigma V, legal age now ambiguous, declined all offices. She built a small vessel, Winding Star, hull grown from Rutrite polymer. She loaded it with replica shards, each tuned to distant dark corridors where more hinges might wait. At her launch ceremony on Europa's Mirror Sea, she addressed watchers, humans, Cererii, keener, even cautious council delegates. I am not weapon or oracle. I am librarian of storms. My job is to shelve thunder where future children can read it before wielding it. Lights of Winding Star dwindled into black. In its wake, broadcast soared, 6 drumbeats, 1 rest, 5, no longer distress but promise, rhythm of vigilance. Galactic long baseline telescopes later caught glimpses of unknown arcs far beyond Halo, maybe Rutrite, maybe other. Debate simmered but did not boil, for story had grown bigger than terror. And though new empires would inevitably rise and forget, they faced now a lattice not of weapons but of mirrors. Each lie they tried to paint would first show them their own face. Memory had teeth, but it had hands too, ready to write, to hold, to guide. And somewhere, in the quiet between solar heartbeats, Earth spun under calm skies. Children tracing constellations whose names still flexed with fresh notes, humming untrained jazz to the patient darkness, certain that when the next unheard chorus came knocking, someone, somewhere, would already be tuning the door. Static like wind through tall grass whispered along the calm array of Winding Star as Sigma V slipped past the pale sheath of intergalactic medium and into the low-density frontier locals called the Quiet Verge. There was no treaty line here, no seated mirror to sing the warnings of pride, only the faint, half-remembered breath of hydrogen atoms and an ultraviolet mist stretched so thin that even her hull's thermal tiles registered perfect night. Somewhere behind her, 100,000 civilizations were learning to live with the sound of their own memories. Somewhere ahead, the map ended. The Rutrite shard in her navigation cradle pulsed a fresh coordinate, a decimal string reversed, its digits cascading prime, composite, prime, a numerical palindrome that ought to be meaningless. Instead it glowed on the flight screen like a distant heartbeat, the trace of a hinge only partially open, the sort of cosmic door that could snap shut if approached with too little context. She tagged it Cradle in Shadow, dropped a drift buoy with encoded polyphony fragments, then angled the nose of Winding Star toward the black. The ship moved as though remembering a forgotten tune. Rutrite fibers softened, then knit tighter as quantum sails deployed in silent, micro-thin ripples. The vessel slid across nothing, driven not by reaction mass, but by tuned asymmetries in vacuum energy, technology that council physicists still called mythical. Sigma V calmed her breathing, synchronizing with the pulse of the shard. Since arriving in open space, she had learned that the shard's flashes were not destination data alone. They were primer phrases in a language that brimmed beneath standard physics. Each pulse contained harmonic templates, the emotional keys required to enter safely. Sorrow before arrogance, wonder before analysis, humility before contact. Fail the sequence, arrive armed with only answers, and the door would erase the traveler or worse, reflect them back unrepaired. 2 days into parametric silence, the ship's biocore signaled company. Scanner bands, adjusted for barely there neutrino drizzle, revealed 6 faint shadows falling into loose orbit around her course. They wore no recognition transponders, no council codes, not even the rhythmic drum signature of listening chain allies. Instead, they emitted a longing note, 4 slow tones, descending, then one high tremolo that shivered the hull panels. A memory tugged in Sigma's mind. This was lullaby cadence from South Pacific fishing clans, recorded in Terran archives long before the Exodus. She broadcast a response, the same lullaby, but woven with Suriri-tied horns, Dominion sibilants, Rutrite counterpulse. The shadows flocked closer, shapes resolving into slender fractal craft shaped like coral spines, hulls extruding microtendrils that tasted electromagnetic fields. A face appeared on the calm veil, elongated, eyes milk white, skin reflecting ultraviolet. The being signed gestures that mixed Terran monastic madra with unknown motions. Sigma's implants translated an approximation, seek a sister of time. She asked, which sister? The being tapped its chest, spoke aloud in a voice like bone chimes. We carry the name you once wore, human. Abandoned in Halo, we grew pale on dark. Now we return to table. Sigma's pulse fluttered. These were Arc descendants more exotic than the orthogate kin, marooned still farther out. She invited a data handshake. They replied by bleeding ultraviolet hieroglyphs down the comm band. Records of night reef villages floating in intracluster void, of songs tuned for cosmic microwave background resonance, of children who never walked under stellar dawn. The shard pulsed approval, sorrow paid, wonder readied. Sigma signaled docking permission. Their ambassador, lithe, wearing a cloak that glittered starlight, entered Wending Star's small vestibule. Breath test confirmed compatible atmosphere. They removed mask, revealing gills along jawline. We are the Kairu, they said, voice tremulous but clear. We followed oldest call, 3 drums, rest, 5, but your network slept. Sigma explained, it sleeps no longer, but distance eats signals. Come, hear what the choir has become. She played them polyphony excerpt, a boy reciting plague elegy beside a Dominion teacher, a council refugee singing jazz scales to lull mix infants. The Kairu's pupils widened. Sweet noise, they whispered. May we carry it? Yes, she said. But first, I seek cradle and shadow. Will you fly wing? They assented. 6 coral craft glided into escort diamonds, weaving protective auroras around Wending Star. Together, they rode the prime number vector to the hinge. Days blurred into monotony broken only by teaching. Sigma taught the Kairu children 3-beat rhythm of memory. They taught her to filter cosmic frost for trace lithium, a trick to keep Rutrite polymers subtle. Reciprocal gifts became tradition. At plus or minus 0.3 light hours from cradle and shadow, the shard glowed white. Space ahead wrinkled. Not a gate, not a mirror. Something inward pulling, a cosmic womb, negative brightness nested in infrablack. Kairu NAV algorithms faltered. Sigma manually plotted spiral descent, letting vacuum tides carry them. Inside boundary, stars vanished. Only black rose tinted by impossible lavender static. Instruments died quiet. Even her implants lost inertial orientation. She closed eyes, felt shard pulses. They told her to play. She hummed Miles Davis, soft, cracked, imperfect. Tiny speaker and collar spilled notes into void. Lavender static brightened, swirling into filaments that formed architecture, a dome of lightless columns arranged like a clock with no numbers. At center floated a cradle, carved from layered obsidian glass, empty save for dust that glittered as though alive. Sigma drifted toward it. Kairu remained back, singing watery chorus. The cradle pulsed, projecting hologram. A newborn, Terran, skin translucent, eyes closed. Then the infant dissolved into data points forming spiral DNA, coded in 4 unknown nucleotides. Equation followed, Rutrite genesis formula. Sigma's breath caught. Archive meridian, essence of life engineering. But attached was covenant glyph. Only memory keeps creation honest. Without full ledger of grief and wonder, this knowledge would devour caretaker. Sigma accepted shard imprint, promising tribute. Dome faded. Ships regained sensors. They exited pocket to normal space. where Kairu craft hooped water tones of joy. Journey home spanned months. Polyphony nodes rushed to integrate Kairu logs. Listening chain flagged them as new mirror custodians. Council hawks demanded quarantine. This time multi-pact majority vetoed. No more silencing births. Kairu were welcomed. Their reef tech bio soon used to heal moons poisoned by singularity fallout. The Genesis equation was sealed inside Trifoci Vault. One shard with Sigma, one with Prism Council, one with Arc cousins beyond Orthogate. Release required unanimous memory review by all seed network custodians. Humanity, at last, demonstrated trust of distributed responsibility. Years drifted. Rhea Stark, traveling between star nurseries to monitor treaty adherence, found once arrogant council admirals studying Cererii, tied rumbles for peacekeeping cues. Paulina died peacefully. Ashes launched through Orthogate in Rutrite Shell. Vela Grant trained new generation of Reflection Guardians. And Sigma V? She returned periodically, each time stranger, eyes reflecting more ultraviolet. She told children of Earth that the dark inside marrow is older than fear, that stories are the bones light grows upon. She whispered that somewhere beyond even Cradle in Shadow lurked the original Rutrites, or their ruins, waiting for a choir bold enough to risk absolute honesty. Maybe one day a flotilla of polyphonic ships would cross deeper shadow, carrying all memories, ugly, luminous, ordinary, singing them at the silence until it chose to answer. But not yet. For now the galaxy pulsed in cautious harmony, tongues learning each other one syllable at a time, markets bartering not just or but trauma, NAV beacons flashing notes instead of warnings. Every treaty assembly opened with the same rhythm. 3 drums, rest, 5, a reminder that monsters once known only in myth had come, had fought, had learned, and had gone on to build mirrors tall enough that any species might see themselves whole. And in that reflection humanity, long chastised as nightmare, found at last the shape of its truest legend. Custodians of remembering, no longer conquerors, no longer beggars, simply the storm-made shepherd, walking barefoot into vast and humming dark.